Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hey everyone, welcome into Computer America. Everything I just said, trying to introduce the shows. So hey, it's there you go. Everyone, welcome into the program. So today on the program we have computer and technology news, and you'll hear all about that and many stories. Yeah, looking forward to it. And in the that's first and second part of the show. Now, with that being said, computeramerica.com, that's where you'll find everything, including past shows, future shows, all the shows, everything you need to know about Computer America. The good news is we've started uploading our old episodes, so hey, expect some updates here in the near future. Let's see, links to our social media sites and, of course, social media pages. That's the best way to find out the latest information and, of course, find out everything you need to know about Computer America. So let's see, with that being said, follow us, and of course you can check out the live video portion on Twitch, all that and more. Of course, we have a chat room there if you'd like to talk with us as well. But everyone, hey, welcome into the program. Let's go ahead and get started with computer and technology news. Here we go. Okay, so I think that our first story that we're going to do is going to be about Voyager. Not the Star Trek, but rather Voyager 1. And this thing is just so cool. Considering that it's it's really the farthest object. I think it's still the farthest object. I think there's another one traveling faster than it, but I don't know if it has been overtaken yet. But still, Voyager 1, which was launched in 1977. Think about how many pieces of technology still work today from 1977. Maybe just the gas lines. Well, actually, I take that back. But still, with that being said, Voyager 1, which was launched in 1977, currently 14 billion with a B miles away from Earth. And check it out. According to Motherboard, kind of where we're pulling this from, this is Becky Ferreira, saying that it is the most distant human-made object. This thing's super cool. And with that being said, Voyager 1 just made new contact. It's pretty cool. So let's see. So the probe is so far flung that it has spent about a decade in interstellar space, where it has made mind-boggling discoveries about the great expanse beyond the heliopause, a boundary where the sun's solar winds gives way to the winds of distant stars. So yeah, this thing is really, really far out there. Again, 14 billion miles. Now, with that being said, they mentioned that Voyager 1's latest dispatches included the detection of a tantalizing hum of plasma waves, which are emissions generated by hot gas in interstellar space, things that come off of stars like our sun. And they mentioned it's with origins that have yet to be fully explained. The probe has been picking up the extremely weak, narrow band plasma wave emissions since 2017, a period in which the spacecraft has traveled about 10 times further than the distance between the Earth and the Sun. So this thing has been traveling very far, very fast, and picking up measurements that we just weren't expecting. Right. Note to self, don't touch that USB port. Now, with that being said, it's extremely far, picking up measurements that are extremely, they're unexplainable, extremely subtle, and yeah, very, very cool. Now, with that being said, the plasma waves, this article goes into it. We're not going to do that, but we'll have a link in the show notes about that. Now, with that being said, the exact mechanisms behind the hums are not yet known, leaving exciting new questions about open to future studies. The team is optimistic that Voyager will continue recording the intriguing signal, which will help them contain its properties and origins, constrain. The data can also help explain more fundamental processes, such as the formation of stars, really picking up things that are only possible 14 billion miles away from Earth. And even on top of that, it's just so cool to think about a project that started 40 some odd years ago, still bringing data in today. Those are extreme returns. One can only hope that most of NASA's projects work out that way. So there you go. Story number one. And that one happened a day or two ago, but I was really excited about that. Let's go ahead and turn to some recent news, and let's pause that. How about this one? Let's see. So we're going to mute this and actually we have to duplicate this and mute this one. Autoplay videos. They are the bane of my existence. Okay. This one from Fox Business, a publication that we normally don't pull from, but it has to do with the recent pipeline, where if you are on the East Coast, North Carolina in particular, I don't know why North Carolina is feeling the brunt of it, but check this one out here. Colonial Pipeline. The reason it's happening is in our neighborhood. It's because, a hack. And a hack that shut down the pipeline altogether. Now, with that being said, what caused it? And just like every other healthcare, school system, local government, large institution, just like any other one, you can bet it was caused by outdated software. It doesn't take much to be able to access these systems, and now, a forensic report noted that the most likely culprit within the company's IT infrastructure was Microsoft Exchange Services, and it was not updated. It was not patched, and there you go. And they mentioned that it was as noted by New York Times reporter, though there were several other issues that researchers characterized as an overall lack of cybersecurity sophistication. I think this goes with many, many companies and industries out there, that the extent of the quote-unquote complication of their of their cybersecurity front is use a password, maybe make them change it every 2 weeks, and it can't be the most recent 6 passwords. That's probably the extent, and by the way, not very safe. I was even at this one facility the other day, and it was like a healthcare facility. Anyways, I was there, and I literally saw about 3 sticky notes with passwords to the database there, because obviously people were using different consoles all the time, and they had different, they had different passwords for each kind of terminal, and they had them on sticky notes right there. Admittedly, not on the kind of patient side, but hey, they were still within plain sight. So the most likely culprit was probably a Microsoft Exchange server, and actually that might have been the same one that Mike Cermak was talking about here the other day. So there you go. It's that one is going to have far-reaching implications because Exchange, if I'm not mistaken, was Microsoft Exchange. I think that was for email. Microsoft Exchange. Sorry, I'm not too familiar with Exchange because I just don't need it. Email service for businesses. So that vulnerability came to light about a month and a half ago, and so many different industries use it, and so many different companies use it. It's that was going to be a big one. So they mentioned that the FBI confirmed it believes that DarkSide Ransomware is responsible for the attack, and DarkSide is a criminal group with origins in Russia. You can be sure that and DarkSide is so intriguing in its own right because they've been kind of releasing announcements about this whole thing, and they're like, whoops, we hit something a little too hard. We hit something that was a little bit too big. We didn't mean to cause this much of a disruption. And I believe they just had a new announcement today saying that DarkSide wanted to, quote unquote, vet their targets more carefully next time. So they want to cause damage and they want to steal money, but they didn't want to cause, they did not want to cause this much damage when they stole that much money. And it's really incredible what's happening. So with that being said, Colonial Pipeline took its system down to contain the threat, and its major pipelines were still down as of Tuesday. They mentioned that the pipeline, by the way, transports about 100 million gallons of fuel each day, including 45% of all the fuel consumed on the East Coast. Its product ranges from various grades of gasoline, diesel fuel, home heating oil, jet fuel, and fuels for the U.S. military. Honestly, this seems like such an important part of our infrastructure. If you told me that there was one road in the United States that handled 45% of all of our traffic, I would say, wow, we should probably make other roads or have a backup. This one is really, really incredible that it even happened. And I'm kind of happy that it was, I don't want to say amateur because these are not amateur, they're new. It is a new group of hackers with experience in the field. But I'm kind of happy that it's these new hackers and not either, anything militaristic, anything, really kind of, it's not anything too nefarious. It was people looking for money. It was not people looking to do damage. Because this could have been a lot worse, and it really kind of highlights just how vulnerable that part of our infrastructure was. So there you have it. We're going to go ahead and move on from that one. But it's really, really incredible that they did that at all. So with that being said, that was story number 2. Story number 3, I think one that, let's see. This story caught my attention, and I really don't. I wanted to dispel something that I think a lot of people would read the headline and would jump to the immediate conclusion. The headline out there, 7 Apple suppliers in China have links to forced labor programs, including the use of Uyghur Muslims from Xinjiang, according to a new report. This one came out about 2 days ago, but of course it's been making the rounds yesterday. And of course the big headline there is, of course, Apple using supplies from camps that are using forced labor from the interned Muslims in China. So something that I think a lot of people kind of need to be clear about is that when you produce in China, and really anyone that uses China, that's like saying Foxconn and trying to equate that Foxconn equals Apple. While yes, Apple has been a loyal customer of Foxconn, Foxconn actually makes products for like everyone. If you produce in China, if you produce tech in China, at some point you are using Foxconn or their supply chains. There's only so many, and especially for an operation as large as Apple, there's only so many supply chains and companies that you can produce within China that don't, I guess, kind of touch this type of, this kind of labor. It's not like Apple said, okay, what is the cheapest? And by the way, this is, let's see. So they mentioned companies like Avery, Luxshare, let's see, Apple, of course, being one of these companies. It's not like Apple went out and said, okay, what's the cheapest labor we can get? Religious and political prisoners in China? Perfect. Yeah, let's use those. No, Apple is using the same providers that they always did, but of course those providers somewhere down the chain are going to, the fact that this is happening in China at all is a travesty in its own right, and it's horrible and it's bad. But yeah, if you operate within China, you are going to be touched by this at some point. And I'm not saying that Apple is, completely innocent and they couldn't, speak out more against this and this kind of thing. And of course, producing in China has its own issues and, humanitarian problems. I'm just saying that Apple is as guilty as every other tech company that produces in China. They mentioned Avery Holding, which makes circuit boards for Apple devices in the Chinese city of Upan. Added 400 Xinjiang labor workers to its workforce between 2019 and 2020. Avery denied those claims to the information, and they also mentioned another provider which made antenna and internal cables for Apple has taken in 1,000 labor workers from Xinjiang, according to the report. Obviously, Apple does not publicly list the suppliers that it works with, but the publication verified their links to the company through the official documents as well as through current employees at the suppliers. One supplier, Lens Technology, which has provided Apple with glass for iPhones, has received 600 workers themselves. They mentioned that Human Rights Watch estimates 1 million Uyghur Muslims are being persecuted in China, and the country has detained them for internment camps, and of course, forcing them to abandon their culture for Chinese customs, much like learning the Mandarin language. The point is, 400 here, 600 there, 1 million within the country, and of course the supply chain that is so large and so massive. This is like a supplier to the supplier for Apple. It's and of course I'm sure that if Apple knew this themselves, they would have spoken out against it if they already haven't. It's but again, the headline that you see there, 7 Apple suppliers in China have links to forced labor programs, which is a couple hundred here and a couple hundred there, far down, or at least somewhat removed from Apple's direct supply chain. Something that Apple themselves, really does not have control over, short of completely pulling out of China, which at this point is impossible because, hey, smartphones, they are produced and made and manufactured in Southeast Asia and parts of China. That is what they are doing. Again, can Apple speak out more? Absolutely. Should Apple be the only company called out like this for using labor like this? Absolutely not. This is something to grab headlines, and again, something that just kind of irks me every time I see it. Apple is, of course, a large target, and it's going to draw the most eyeballs. So there you have it. Okay. Now, with that being said, sorry about going in on that. How about something positive, which isn't always the easiest thing to do nowadays? Something positive. Okay. This would apply to some people listening to the show today. So pay attention if you would like $50 off your monthly broadband discount. And I promise this isn't paid. No, this is actually a program by the US government. The FCC's Emergency Pandemic Fund is open with 825 different home and mobile internet service providers participating. So check this one out. The FCC acknowledged that and by the way, this is the update that just happened before the show. They have acknowledged that it's having some trouble handling the high number of people trying to sign up for the subsidies, because obviously subsidies are going to, be on a first come first served basis. They say, quote, "We have witnessed a high level of demand in the Emergency Broadband Benefit Program, which demonstrates how critical this program is for families struggling to afford internet service during the pandemic." They mentioned that we are actively working to resolve any issues users can count and increasing resources to meet demand. The high level of interest is evident that the internet service is critical and for far too many is out of reach, and why we need programs like this. So by the way, Congress approved the subsidy. It's about $3.2 billion going out to cable, fiber to the home, DSL, fixed wireless ISPs, and other home internet service providers. And the subsidies aren't just for home internet, but for mobile providers as well. To enroll, you have this link here. We'll include it in the show notes. You can see here it is and by the way, there's the warning that it's under high demand. Universal Service Administration Co. or getemergencybroadband.org. So of course, this is, you can get a subsidy up to $50 a month discount on your broadband service or equipment rentals. You can have up to $75 a month discount if your household is on qualifying tribal lands, which, that of course applies to a number of people out there, and a one-time discount of up to $100 for a laptop, tablet, or desktop computer. That would, of course, be, I would assume, for people who are forced to work from home or school from home as well. And by the way, these are temporary discounts for qualifying low-income households, and you can, of course, check if your home is eligible. So if your home is designated low income and, of course, need all the help that you can during the pandemic, this may be something that you want to check in as well. So it's honestly not that hard. And again, hundreds and hundreds of ISPs and mobile providers are working with this. So there you go. They mentioned, and by the way, the actual cutoff is below 135% of federal poverty guidelines, as do people who suffered substantial loss of income when the pandemic began. So there's this would be great for families, kids who have to telecommute, school from home. Places like that, something that I thought everyone should be aware of, that if you need help during these times, this is a program you should definitely take advantage of, because, hey, the money's been allocated. It's up to the individual families, unfortunately, to make sure that they get those discounts. So, okay. With that being said, let's go ahead and continue on here. And I don't think I meant to close that one. Yeah. Okay, how about, let's see, another good one. Okay, not that one. Valve. We haven't talked about Valve in a while. Gabe Newell. And Gabe is one of those guys who, I really do feel like Gabe Newell with Steam and Valve, he's really a person who likes video games and has started a very successful business around video games. But at his core, he is still, he's not turned gamer into CEO. He's a gamer who still continues to be a gamer who just happens to be a CEO. And one of the best things that he could do, in his mind, is continue down the console road. Yeah, you may remember the old Steam consoles, Steam machines or whatever the heck they were called. They were overpriced computers that were pre-bundled, made with, kind of pre-assembled hardware. And, where the true attraction of a console is the fact that they're pretty affordable for what you get. These Steam machines were anywhere from like $800 to like $20,000. It was a pretty ill-fated attempt at breaking into the console market. Well, Gabe Newell he was speaking on Monday to students in Auckland, New Zealand, Santa Maria College, and he mentioned that one of the students there asked, "Will Steam be porting any games on consoles, or will it stay on PC?" And the answer was a vague gesture at unspecified plans. "You will get a better idea of that by the end of this year. It won't be the answer you expect," Newell said, saying, "You'll say, aha, now I get what he was talking about." And of course, the answer you would expect would probably be, "We're sticking with PCs," so an answer involving console plans would definitely be unexpected. But obviously, Newell did not release any kind of roadmap or any kind of details. Here's the fun thing, though. Newell could simply be pointing out the console versions of the upcoming Valve games. The company has ported its games in decades past with releases like the Orange Box, Left 4 Dead series, Half-Life Alyx, of course, was on PlayStation VR. It could be something as simple as, they're finding a way to port existing Steam games onto existing consoles. But hey, Newell has complained in the past about the stifling restrictions that developing games for consoles. And of course, more broadly, Newell's answer might point to attempts to bring versions of Steam Storefront to the console in some form. You can look at the Big Picture OS or Steam OS as an example. There you go. Newell remains extremely publicity shy, even by the standards of secretive game industry executives. So making news while talking to a group of New Zealand grade schoolers is not that out of character. Newell has been living a self-described COVID refugee in New Zealand since March 2020. He has announced plans to apply for residency in the country and even support a local concert series. There you go. So yeah, I'm pretty intrigued by what Newell could be releasing. I would expect another attempt at the console. Obviously, with their latest release from Valve being a VR game, if they find some way to bring an all-inclusive console with VR headset and VR capabilities to the masses, I truly and honestly believe that that is what Valve would be most interested in. Whether or not that's going to catch on, and of course, consoles, they're very, very popular. Making them is extremely difficult with the current chip shortage, but consoles are as popular as ever. VR still needs to catch on. It's pretty cool, and there are some games that are kind of great on VR, but it hasn't caught wildfire. And I would say a lot of that is because people still don't have access to VR. To even find out if VR is something that people even want. First they have to have the ability, and then there's the, do people even want this? I could totally see Valve trying to bridge that gap and bring the hardware to people. And then, of course, the marketplace, and think of all the additional revenue the store would have if people actually wanted to purchase VR. Hey, it could be something. Definitely have to wait and see, but again, hopefully by the end of the year, we will know more. Speaking of hardware, and this is the Nvidia RTX 3050, something that I haven't really thought much about because I believe this is for laptops. But check this one. Nvidia's RTX 3050 brings ray tracing and DLSS to $800 laptops. Think about that. The RTX 3090, which, don't get me wrong, is undoubtedly much more powerful than, I'm sure, a 3050. But that thing is like $1,200. And this is bringing an entire computer for, really way less than that price. Now, these are new entry-level GPUs, and I think it's really cool how Nvidia was able to, kind of squeeze this into a laptop, and then on top of that, be able to be able to make something work with much bigger limitations. Now, deep learning supersampling and upscaling technology play a huge part in what the 3050 has to offer. The card, they mentioned that the card slot in below the existing RTX 3060, and it cuts across the board. You can dive into Nvidia's comparison table below, but of course you can see that the short version is that these cheaper GPUs have less memory, 4 instead of 8, fewer CUDA cores, fewer tensor cores, and fewer ray tracing cores, which again you can see the chart here. And let's see, so the 3080, 3050 Ti, 3050, this one here over here on the right is what we're talking about. And yeah, 4 gigs, 6 gigs, 8 gigs, 16 gigs, so on and so forth. Still, this is for the laptop, and it's pretty formidable. Here's the cool thing though, DLSS lets your GPU render a game at a lower resolution and then uses artificial intelligence to upscale everything to a higher resolution, helping you hit a higher frame rate than you could in your native resolution. It sounds like AI hocus pocus, but it actually works. You just need the right Nvidia card and a game that supports it. On a lower power laptop, anything that helps boost gaming performance without sacrificing graphical fidelity is welcome. And I think that's the really cool part. One of the ways that you can get better performance and better frame rates is, let's say you're playing on 1080p, drop it down to 720p. Not unlike streaming, from 1080p to 720p. Not so much for like the resolution in streaming, but more for the less information that you have to encode, decode, that kind of thing, and display. So what they're saying here is that by running the game at a lower resolution, and it may not look as good, it may not look perfect, but if it looks 98% as good as a higher resolution and artificial intelligence, kind of on the back end, without having to stream that data through the graphics card and then display that data through the graphics card, but rather letting the graphics card, kind of plug in the missing bits of data in that upscaling, it's able to do its job faster and better. And the performance here, while I'm not exactly sure what the performance could be, if it's anything noticeable, that is really, really cool and actually kind of innovative. Something that I had, really never, something that I had never really considered. So Intel's Tiger Lake H processor was also announced today, and we should see a lot of devices launching with both chips. That's if there's a sufficient supply of the chips to go around. Obviously, Nvidia is already facing serious video card shortages, and Intel is being hit by the global chip shortage as well. But hey, it's a new graphics card, new tech, and yeah, the Tiger Lake H processor is something that I was also looking at too. It's Intel seems to be punching from behind, which it has for the past year or two, but every time AMD comes out with something, Intel has to come out and say how their technology, which is still struggling on the 14 nanometer technology, is just as good as AMD's, which is running on the 7 nanometer. But hey, let's talk about Intel real quick as well. Intel claims its new Tiger Lake H CPUs for laptops beats AMD Ryzen's 5000, where allegedly comparable processors for the laptop, Intel beats AMD by anywhere from about 11 to 26%. These benchmarks need to be taken with a grain of salt whenever Intel or AMD or anyone else who produces hardware releases preliminary benchmarks. They're going to set up tests that highlight the absolute best of the best conditions for Intel and against AMD. They're going to I'm just going to say it. They're going to cherry pick their own data, wait for third-party benchmarks always. But still, it's pretty promising. Now, Intel put the spotlight on the fastest Core i9 11 980HK chip. And don't get me wrong, Intel's naming scheme is never fun, but let's break that down. So the Core i9 means it's an i9 processor. That means it's hyper-threaded. I believe they recently switched i7 to non-hyper-threaded. So i9 is 8-core, 16-thread, 1100 series. So not the 10, not the 9, not the 8. It's the the 11,000 series at this point. And then the 980 would be that would be the speed of this processor, and then the HK meaning it's a laptop or mobile version of their chipset. Now, the company claims that the CPU is able to beat its predecessor by several percentage points in games like Hitman 3 and Rainbow Six Siege, anywhere from 5 to 21%. Intel also said that the latest Intel processor beats the Ryzen 5900HX by anywhere from 11 to 26, as we said before. As is customary with new Intel CPU launches, other OEMs refresh their laptop lineups with the new chips. Dell, Lenovo, HP, MSI, Acer, Asus, all of them have new laptops out with the new chipset. So obviously today was a big day for laptop hardware, and it coincided, as with our previous story, it coincided with new GPUs. So new CPUs, new GPUs. Hey, it's a great time to be in the market for a new laptop if you can get one. But there you go. The new chips won't be sold to consumers on their own, but you'll likely see them in numerous laptops in the market throughout the next year. Because oddly enough, not many consumers make their own laptops. You know, a few still make their own PCs, but not many make their own laptops. So there you have it. Let's go ahead and talk about... You know what? Real quick, Intel to Intel, and then we'll move on from the hardware. But this one is a little bit different. Mr. John Fingus and Intel says it has solved a key bottleneck in quantum computing. Something that we're always trying to keep a pulse on, even though it's not the easiest thing in the world to do. But still, quantum computing. It's something that still needs a lot of work. Google has claimed to have victories. IBM has claimed many victories in research on their own. Intel, obviously, is working on quantum computing as well. Pretty much anyone with any kind of tech aspirations has their own arm of quantum computing because the benefits are so amazing once you finally get it to work. Anything that could be done on a supercomputer or potentially done on a supercomputer could potentially be done much, much faster on a quantum computer. The point is, the research is worth it. Now, Intel just took a significant step forward, making quantum computing more practical. The company and Q-Tech said that they've demonstrated the first instance of high-fidelity 2-qubit control using its Horse Ridge cryogenic control processor. Quantum computers normally run into an interconnect bottleneck by using room temperature electronics to steer a refrigerated quantum chip. Because obviously when you have to measure these things at quantum levels, it needs to be super, super cold, like as close to 0 degrees Kelvin as you can possibly get. The demo showed that Horse Ridge could achieve the same fidelity, 99.99%, as those hotter electronics. And hotter, of course, means something that is not frozen to absolute zero. The two firms also showed that Horse Ridge could control multiple qubits on a single radio frequency, also known as frequency multiplexing, by using algorithms that's much more efficient on quantum computers than conventional machines. Now, what does that all mean? The breakthrough could lead to processors that integrate the electronics and quantum chips on the same die, and that in turn could make it easier to scale quantum computers and have them tackle more of the calculations that would be difficult or impossible with traditional computers, which is the whole point of quantum computers altogether. Do things that traditional computers can't. Something that I always like to remind people is that doesn't mean traditional computers aren't still useful. Traditional computers can do things that quantum computers could never do. Sequential computing is something that quantum computers just aren't really good at. Parallel computing, hey, that's where they really excel. But if you need to stream a video, if you need to play a video game, if you need to order food, that's something that quantum computers will never do because it's just not how they're designed or programmed. And it's just not what they're good at. Whereas predicting weather, artificial intelligence, encryption, things that have a lot of details and a lot of data happening simultaneously and a lot of cause and effect and reaction and chaos theory, blah, blah, blah. That's where quantum computers are really going to be amazing in financial services, in so many ways. But traditional computers, there's still going to be a need for them. Don't worry. You don't have to run out and buy one of these. But still, being able to produce these things on the same chip is definitely going to help the scalability. You don't need to make essentially two systems, one to interpret the other. No, you can build them essentially together. Very, very nice. Okay, let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 9. So yeah, we're already up to story number 10. Still have plenty of time to talk about this. And because I mentioned IBM in passing, because that's who we're most familiar with on the show, talking about quantum computers, IBM has a different task. Well, of course, they're doing many things in parallel, but check this one out. IBM compiles Dataset to teach software how software is made. Yep, this is the beginning of the end. This is when coders don't become necessary. For computers, computers can make computers, they can make programs by themselves, and yeah, it's the beginning of the end, because eventually they're going to make a system that doesn't need humans. But still, it's something that could really potentially speed up so much of software development, where even if you could get computers to design software that was still made for humans and that whole thing, and I'm just being, I'm just joking, but even if only one of those, let's say, million programs is actually useful, that doesn't, it doesn't matter how much effort was put into it, because hey, you got something useful for no human interaction. It's really, the positives are so mind-blowing. Now, IBM has assembled a massive silo of source code for teaching machine learning programs about programming. That's right, everyone out there who's a programmer and your shoddy code is being used to train an AI. We are all doomed. Still, it's dubbed Project CodeNet. The set contains 14 million code samples, totaling 500 million lines in more than 55 programming languages. Check this out. It's not just, it's not just C++, it's not just, Ruby or whatever, or, Java or whatever you think would be the most, convenient. No, this AI is learning to program in Java, C, go to COBOL. So yeah, it's learning COBOL of all things, Pascal, and even the oldie but a goodie, Fortran. This thing is learning everything. Truth be told, more than 3/4 of it is, of course, being programmed in C++ and Python, but it is definitely being introduced to in other languages, so that it's not tripped up or, kind of caught off guard whenever it sees a programming language that it may not have encountered before. They mentioned that the source code wasn't taken from production nor in development applications. It was collected from entries submitted to 2 programming contests organized in Japan. In these contests, competitors were challenged to write the necessary code to give a given set of inputs into a set of desired outputs. About half of the samples work as expected, and the rest are labeled as either wrong solutions, non-building, or buggy. I can tell you, my short foray into programming, I would have easily been able to contribute buggy or non-building code to this project very easily. Now, ideally, you would train an AI tool to favorably identify the good programs and reject the bad ones. For 7 million of the samples, the input and required output is included. Now, Big Blue wants CodeNet to follow in the footsteps of ImageNet, the database of pictures and labels for training computer vision applications, and become the leading dataset for teaching software to understand the blueprints of, well, software. Imagine teaching a computer how a computer is made. That's essentially what they're trying to do here. And of course, the next step beyond that is, well, once it knows how, kind of computer coding language is done, it can then itself make different forms of that coding language. It can teach itself to write its own programs. Now, with that being said, it's hoped CodeNet can be used to train development tools that can, for instance, search application in library source for desired routines, or perhaps translate from one language to another, or recognize faulty or incorrect or correct implementation. I think that'd be the best. Instead of just returning an error code on line so-and-so, if the code could actually learn to correct the mistake, if there's a logical flaw, if there's some kind of input that it doesn't recognize, if the program itself knows why the program is not working, then imagine how much faster, even on top of that, imagine how much faster software development could be if you just had to plug in, enough detail and the rest of it were to build itself around it. Now, obviously, many instances of the programming compiler will, kind of fill in those blanks for you already, but to be able to take it to the next step, that's something that would be very, very helpful, I'm sure, to a lot of people. Now, the IBM and MIT IBM Watson AI Lab team behind the dataset has produced a paper describing their work and put all the collated material on the project's GitHub page, saying that the dataset is not only unique in its scale, but also the diversity of coding tasks it can help benchmark, from code similarity and classification for advances in code recommendation algorithms and code translations between a variety of languages to advances in code performance and improvement techniques. There's a lot there. There's a lot of benefit. Even if this doesn't put coders out of a job, this could help coders do their job so much better and faster. And especially using AI to, let's say you develop something for iOS, using a programming language for Apple, and having it, just flip a switch, hit a button, and it being able to rebuild itself for Android instead. That would save so much development time and so much effort. Or imagine you are building a program, and the program is able to correct itself, fix itself, and of course be able to build itself, all without the coder's input. Really, really incredible what IBM could be able to do with CodeNet. So, really happy that they're working on that. Okay, so with that being said, how about let's see, do I really? Yeah, just real quick. Won't get too far into this one. Tesla, you know them. They had a driver of a Tesla had a crash recently. Well, police in California have arrested another gentleman who was riding in the back seat of his Tesla. Multiple 911 calls Monday evening reported a person seated in the back seat of a Model 3 Tesla without anyone in the driver's seat while the vehicle traveled on I-80 across the San Francisco-Oakland Bay Bridge. Again, Tesla does not have full self-driving. You need to be ready to take over the control at any point. And hey, not to put down my generation, but yeah, it was a 25-year-old gentleman who was arrested for reckless driving and disobeying a peace officer. That was made on Tuesday. They mentioned that prior to the arrest, members of the public had captured video of someone resembling the gentleman arrested operating his vehicle in a reckless manner, and they cited him for similar behavior. Now, with that being said, scanning here if we need to find anything else here. Yep, I think that's about it. Sharma was released from the county jail on Tuesday, and the comments suggest he is among a number of Tesla drivers who rely too much on the company's driving system. It's showing people the thought process behind people who have way too much trust in a very unproven technology. Unproven to the point that Tesla themselves say, don't trust this completely. Keep your eyes on the wheel, your eyes on the road, be ready to take over at any point. It will do, it can do 70% of the driving, but that 30% that it can't, yeah, that's going to be your demise. That's going to be your death, that 30% that it can't do. And hopefully no one else is, if they're operating this thing in such unsafe conditions. Okay, next story. How about this one? This is one that we heard about a couple of weeks ago, and I have not heard anything since until today. Check this one out. Ransomware crooks post cops psych evaluations after talks with DC police stall. Just like the pipeline, well, turns out the DC police have been hacked, and this happened a couple of weeks ago. And according to the data, everything from past evidence, body cam footage, psych evals, obviously social security numbers, dates of birth, residential, financial, marital histories, driver's license photos, fingerprints, polygraph tests, psychological assessments, everything you can think that a police department would have. All of it has fallen into the hands of these criminals, and they wanted $4 million to not release it. You could really imagine all of the criminal cases that could be, kind of questioned or put on the line if they were to release all this information. All of the danger that cops could face if their home addresses and photos and driver's license could be searched by anyone on the internet. You can imagine how troublesome it would be if their social security numbers and dates of birth and home addresses were all published at the same time. It would be very, very bad. But still, who wants to pay $4 million? Does the department even have $4 million to pay them? Well, turns out the data included in a 161 megabyte download from a website on the dark web was made available after negotiations broke down between members of the Babook ransomware group and MPD officials. According to screenshots purporting to be chat transcripts between the two organizations, after earlier threatening to leak the names of confidential informants to crime gangs, the operators agreed to remove the data while they carried out the now aborted negotiations, the transcript showed. Yeah, these guys are definitely not the good guys, and they are essentially trying to hold the police ransom for $4 million. They have a quote here saying, you are a state institution, treat your data with respect and think about their price. The operator said, according to the transcript, they cost even more than $4 million. Do you understand that? And they mentioned that our final proposal is an offer to pay $100,000 to prevent the release of the stolen data. That was a negotiator with the police, saying that if this offer is not acceptable, then it seems our conversation is complete. I think we understand the consequences of not reaching an agreement. We are okay with that outcome. So instead of taking the $100,000, they have decided to release, well, a lot of personal information. The negotiations reach a dead end. The amount that we were offered does not suit us. We are posting 20 more personal files on officers. 3 of the names listed on the personal files match the names of officers who work for the MPD. The files were based on background investigations of job applications under consideration to be hired by the department. Still, the ransomware attack on the MPD has no known connection to the one that hit Colonial Pipeline because obviously different set of criminals. Still, we're going to see a lot more of these instances where criminals seem to be targeting institutions. They're targeting governments, companies, infrastructure, things that are very, very valuable, but at the same time, let's face it, receive next to no funding for cybersecurity. They receive funding for carrying gasoline, for providing police services, for that whole thing. If you think that city municipal governments, really fund their, the police and firefighters, go behind the scenes and check out the 911 and emergency dispatch systems. Those things were running on gear from the 80s and 90s for the longest time. Like, it was big news when 911 started to accept text messages like 4 years ago. It's not a very well-funded operation, especially not one for extortion purposes. But by and large, it's a large surface area to attack. And potentially they could have money. So it's we're going to see more of it. It's not over yet, but there you have it. Okay, speaking of crooks, although a different kind of crook, like I said at the top of the hour, although I might have been muted, so you might not have heard it, Vizio. This might be the last story of the day, but Vizio, if you've had one of their televisions, they released their quarter 2 earnings, and check it out. You'd think that a company that sells televisions, well, they would make the bulk of their money selling televisions. Turns out, not so much the case. Vizio makes nearly as much money from ads and data as it does from televisions. So if you wonder, wow, how is that 55-inch plasma or LCD so cheap? No one comes close to it. Well, looks like Vizio does it through advertising and data collection, as they were kind of sued over before. They turned that capability on. This capability has been possible since like 2012, I want to say, and they turned that feature on without telling people, or at least they didn't have enough disclosure about them turning it on. And long story short, they were sued, they became more public about it, and even with them becoming more public and more overt of their advertising and data collection, they're still just as successful as ever. Now, the execs said on a call, the company continues to court relationships with brands and agencies following the same plan laid out 6 years ago with a business built on its Inscape automated content recognition tech, where that means, hey, the television is going to know if you're watching Nickelodeon, MTV, Cartoon Network. It's going to know what you're watching. If you're watching Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, it's going to know what you're watching, when you're watching, how often you watch it, the length that you watch, how many people are in the room, so on and so forth. It's going to be able to measure all of those things, package it, and sell it. Now, what they call that is Platform Plus, time spent on SmartCast TVs by input source. And they mention they have everything from SmartCast, which would be the built-in operating system, linear, so that would be things passing through it. You could think of that like cable or satellite, game consoles, and OTT devices, where I would imagine that'd be like over-the-air or streaming services, different kinds of input. So yeah, they're even measuring how much time and what inputs are being done on this. Now, they said that the FTC slapped Vizio on the wrist for its Inscape efforts back in 2017, saying that the data collection was done without properly informing viewers, as I just said. Good to be right. Now, the company's products are a bit clearer on what you're opting into, but also rely on many connected features like AirPlay and Cast that encourage people to use internet features. So if you want to be able to use some of these features, you have to have the data collection on. Vizio said it now has 13.4 million active SmartCast accounts, with viewers spending 52% of their time viewing SmartCast inputs, which again are things like built-in apps or casting from another device. 34% of viewing time spent on linear TV, with 7% on gaming consoles or over-the-top devices. Now, they're saying that so what can we expect from Vizio moving forward? More low-price TVs with lots of connected features, and hey, that $30, $50, $100 that you're going to save by buying a Vizio, just know. And honestly, if people opt into it and they know what they're getting into, there's really no problem with it. But just know that everything that you watch, everything that you do, when you watch, everything that you interact with on that TV, you are letting someone else know. And, well, also, on top of that, you can go into the settings under Vizio, under Menu, System, Reset Admin, Viewing Data, and you can actually change the settings themselves. Just like any other computer out there, it may be worth your time, effort, and energy to really dig down into the settings and see what it is you are actually sharing with Vizio, the company. But it seems like they have a recipe for success, and that is lower, affordable televisions with lots of strings attached in the background. It's probably not going away, but there you have it. Everyone, thank you for tuning into Computer America. Until next time, have a great day. Thank you so much. We'll catch you next time. Bye, everyone.